What if I told you that the moment you forgot your colleague's name last Tuesday, or when you walked into the kitchen and couldn't remember why, wasn't just stress? What if those small moments, the ones you've been brushing off as getting older or having too much on my mind, were actually your brain sending you an urgent message? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Dementia doesn't show up with a dramatic entrance. It doesn't knock on your door and announce itself. It slides in quietly, hiding behind everyday forgetfulness, camouflaged as normal aging. And by the time most people realize something's wrong, they've already missed years, sometimes even a decade, when they could have done something about it. Recent research from Johns Hopkins University tracked thousands of adults between ages 40 and 70 for over a decade. The findings were sobering. People who dismissed early cognitive changes showed dramatically higher rates of developing dementia within 10 to 15 years,
compared to those who caught the warning signs early and took action. The supplement industry doesn't want you to know this. Neither do the pharmaceutical companies selling medications that only work after it's too late. They profit from people waiting until the symptoms are undeniable. But early detection? That's your most powerful weapon. In this video, we're revealing the 5 early warning signs of dementia that appear years, sometimes up to a decade, before doctors typically diagnose the condition. These aren't the obvious red flags like forgetting your address or getting lost driving home. Those come much later. These are subtle changes, the kind that hide in your daily routine, the ones most people miss entirely. Every point we discuss is backed by research from major medical institutions. We've linked sources in the description below. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to watch for, why these signs matter, and most importantly, what you can do right now to protect your brain. Before we begin, drop a comment below and tell us your age, where you're watching from, and have you noticed any changes in your memory lately? We read and reply to every single comment with personalized advice. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We post brain health content every week that could save your cognitive future. Now, let's talk about the first warning sign that almost everyone overlooks. Number 5. Word-finding difficulties that follow a pattern. Let's be clear, everyone forgets words occasionally. You're talking and suddenly the word you need just vanishes. That's normal. But here's what's not normal: when it starts happening multiple times a day. When you begin using vague words like thing or stuff because you can't access the specific noun. When people around you start finishing your sentences because you trail off mid-thought. That pattern? That's a warning sign. Recent neurological studies have shown that adults experiencing consistent word retrieval problems often show reduced connectivity in the left temporal lobe, the brain region responsible for language processing. This isn't brain damage yet. It's reduced efficiency, like a highway where lanes are starting to close. And here's the critical part. This reduced connectivity can appear years before any other dementia symptoms become noticeable. That's years of warning time that most people waste because they chalk it up to stress or lack of sleep. Let me share a case that illustrates this perfectly. A patient came in, early 50s, convinced something was seriously wrong. She worked in marketing, and during presentations, professional terms she'd used for 20 years would suddenly disappear. Words like synergy, deliverables, analytics, gone. She'd pause awkwardly, searching desperately. Her confidence collapsed. She started avoiding meetings, certain her career was over.
But after comprehensive testing, we discovered she wasn't developing dementia at all. She had severe sleep apnea that was fragmenting her sleep and starving her brain of oxygen every night. Her word-finding issues were caused by chronic sleep deprivation, not neurodegeneration. We addressed the sleep apnea. Within weeks, her verbal fluency returned completely. But not everyone's that fortunate. I've also evaluated patients who dismissed word-finding problems for years, only to discover they were in the earliest stages of cognitive decline. Catching it early allowed for interventions that significantly slowed progression: medication, cognitive training, lifestyle modifications. The key message: if you're experiencing word-finding difficulties several times per week, don't ignore it. Document when it happens, how often, under what circumstances. Share that information with your doctor.
Early evaluation can reveal reversible causes, like sleep disorders, medication side effects, or vitamin deficiencies. Or it can identify early neurological changes when intervention is most effective. Now let's move to a warning sign that's even more subtle and often completely misinterpreted. Number 4. Trouble with spatial tasks you used to handle easily. This one catches people completely off guard because it doesn't feel like a memory problem. It shows up in small ways. You misjudge distances when parking and scrape the car. You get turned around in a parking garage you've used for years. You struggle assembling furniture from simple instructions, something you've done dozens of times before. People assume their eyesight is going bad, or maybe they're just distracted. But often, it's not vision, it's spatial reasoning. And spatial reasoning problems can be early indicators of cognitive decline, particularly Alzheimer's disease.
Here's why this matters. Spatial processing happens in specific brain regions, including the parietal lobe. Research has shown that these areas can show changes years before memory problems surface. Studies using virtual reality environments to test navigation ability have found that adults who later develop Alzheimer's often show early deficits, taking longer to find targets, making more wrong turns, showing different patterns of brain activation. Think about the implications. Your brain's internal GPS system may start malfunctioning years before you forget names or appointments. But because it happens gradually, most people adapt without realizing something's wrong. You start taking familiar routes instead of shortcuts. You avoid multi-level parking structures. You ask someone else to navigate. These adaptations mask the underlying problem. Here's a simple self-test. Visualize your daily commute in reverse.
Can you mentally trace the route from work to home? Can you picture what's on each side of the road at major intersections? If this exercise feels difficult or impossible, your spatial reasoning may need evaluation. Now, not every spatial problem indicates dementia. Vision issues, medication side effects, inner ear problems, even vitamin B12 deficiency can all affect spatial ability. But if you're noticing progressive changes, especially multiple symptoms together, you need comprehensive assessment. The hopeful news? Catching spatial deficits early creates opportunities for intervention. Cognitive training targeting spatial tasks, dietary optimizations like Mediterranean-style eating patterns rich in omega-3 fatty acids, cardiovascular exercise to increase blood flow to the brain, and potentially medications if appropriate. Early detection buys you time. Time to build cognitive reserve, time to make lifestyle changes, time to maintain independence longer.
But as concerning as these first two signs are, they're nothing compared to the next one, which looks exactly like depression, but isn't. Number 3, profound apathy, and antidepressants don't help. This warning sign is particularly dangerous because it gets misdiagnosed constantly. Apathy looks like this. Someone who used to be energetic and engaged gradually withdraws. They stop suggesting activities. They decline invitations. They sit for hours doing nothing. Not watching TV, not reading, just sitting. Their doctor diagnoses depression and prescribes antidepressants, but the medication barely helps, if at all. Here's why. Apathy can be an early manifestation of certain types of dementia, particularly frontotemporal dementia, but it looks remarkably similar to depression on the surface. The distinction matters enormously because the underlying causes and the appropriate responses are completely different.
Brain imaging research has revealed that depression-related apathy shows activity patterns in emotional processing regions, while dementia-related apathy involves different circuits, particularly those governing motivation and goal-directed behavior. Adults with neurological apathy can show significantly reduced activation in motivation circuits, even when offered rewards for completing tasks. Their brains struggle to generate the drive signal needed to initiate activities. This isn't laziness. This isn't psychological weakness. It's neurological. Here's how to distinguish between the two. Depression-related apathy usually comes packaged with other symptoms: persistent sadness, feelings of worthlessness, sleep disruption, appetite changes, sometimes even thoughts of self-harm. Dementia-related apathy is often more isolated. The person doesn't necessarily feel depressed or worthless. They just can't muster the internal motivation to care about things that previously mattered deeply to them. I evaluated a patient, late 40s, whose spouse described a complete personality transformation. She'd always been the organizer, trips, dinners, hobbies, social events. Over about 18 months, she'd gradually stopped all of it. Her doctor had tried multiple antidepressants. None produced meaningful improvement. Detailed neuropsychological testing revealed subtle executive function deficits, problems with planning, organizing, and initiating tasks. Her apathy wasn't primarily emotional. It was early frontotemporal dementia affecting her frontal lobe circuits. Because we identified it early, we implemented cognitive rehabilitation strategies, connected the family with specialized resources, and helped them understand what to expect and how to provide appropriate support. The condition continues progressing, but the family was prepared.
They had time for important conversations while she could still participate meaningfully. The critical takeaway: if you or someone you love develops profound apathy, especially if antidepressants don't help, insist on neurological evaluation. Don't accept it's just depression without comprehensive cognitive testing. Apathy can be a red flag demanding thorough investigation. But as important as these first 3 signs are, the next 2 are even more predictive. Number 2 is something most people experience occasionally, but when it follows a specific pattern, research suggests it's one of the strongest predictors of future cognitive decline. Number 2, executive function problems, when managing daily tasks becomes difficult. Executive function is your brain's management system. It's what allows you to plan, organize, prioritize, manage time, and solve problems efficiently. When this system starts failing, daily life becomes increasingly difficult to manage. And here's what catches people off guard. Executive dysfunction often appears before obvious memory problems. You can still remember facts, faces, and events, but your ability to organize information and manage complex tasks starts deteriorating. Research following middle-aged and older adults over many years has consistently shown that individuals displaying even mild executive dysfunction show substantially higher rates of developing dementia within the following decade or 2, compared to those maintaining normal executive function. Let me give you real-world examples of what executive dysfunction looks like. You've managed household finances for years, but suddenly you're paying some bills twice, forgetting others until late fees arrive, struggling to organize tax documents that used to be straightforward. You follow recipes you've made dozens of times, but now you lose track of steps, forget ingredients you already added, can't properly sequence the tasks. You used to plan trips effortlessly, but now even a simple weekend getaway feels overwhelming and confusing. These aren't memory failures in the traditional sense. Your brain often still knows what needs to be done. The problem is organizing and executing the steps in proper order. A patient in his mid-50s came in describing exactly this pattern. He'd worked in finance for 30 years, managing complex accounts, but he was making uncharacteristic mistakes with his own household budget. Not huge errors, but consistent small problems that didn't make sense given his expertise. "My brain feels foggy," he said, "like I'm trying to think through cotton." Comprehensive testing revealed mild cognitive impairment with prominent executive deficits. Brain imaging showed changes in his frontal lobe, the brain's planning and organizing center. We caught it at a stage when intervention could still make a meaningful difference. He started cognitive training specifically targeting executive skills, worked with a specialist on compensatory strategies like external memory aids and structured routines, made lifestyle modifications, including optimizing sleep, eliminating alcohol, which can impair frontal lobe function, and beginning regular cardiovascular exercise. More than a year later, he's stabilized. His executive function hasn't necessarily improved dramatically, but critically, it hasn't continued declining at the rate it was. He's maintaining his independence and quality of life. That's what early detection offers: time to implement protective strategies before decline becomes severe and disabling. If you're experiencing executive dysfunction, and I mean truly being honest with yourself here, don't wait and hope it improves on its own. These problems rarely spontaneously resolve. They're either stable, suggesting potentially reversible causes like sleep disorders, medication effects, or metabolic issues that can be corrected,
or they're progressive, suggesting neurological changes that need early intervention. Either way, you need proper evaluation to know what you're dealing with. And now we've reached the most important warning sign of all. Number 1. The predictor that often appears earliest, sometimes years before any other symptoms. The sign that has shown some of the strongest correlations with future cognitive decline in long-term research studies. Number 1. Subtle personality changes that family members notice first. This is the warning sign that families almost always recognize in hindsight, but rarely identify in real time as something neurological. It's also potentially the most heartbreaking, because it affects the fundamental essence of who someone is.
Here's what it looks like. Someone who's always been patient and kind becomes increasingly irritable and sometimes harsh. They make comments that seem inappropriate or insensitive, completely out of character. They lose their usual empathy and consideration. They become impulsive in ways they never were before. Their judgment seems off. Their social awareness fades. And critically, they often don't recognize these changes in themselves. Subtle personality shifts, particularly increased irritability, reduced empathy, loss of social filter, and impulsive decision-making, can be among the very earliest detectable signs of neurodegenerative disease. Research suggests these changes can appear a decade or even longer before obvious memory impairment. Long-term studies examining personality assessments conducted years apart have found striking patterns. Individuals showing even modest personality changes over time demonstrate substantially elevated risk of developing dementia in subsequent years, compared to those whose core personality traits remain stable. The neurological reason: personality is governed by circuits in the frontal and temporal lobes. When diseases like Alzheimer's or frontotemporal dementia begin their course, they frequently start affecting these regions first, years before reaching the memory centers deeper in the brain. As these circuits begin malfunctioning, personality gradually shifts, but it happens slowly enough that families often unconsciously adapt without recognizing the significance of what they're witnessing. Here's what to watch for: someone becoming noticeably more self-centered than they were, losing interest in other people's feelings and experiences, saying socially inappropriate things they would never have said before, showing impulsive or poor decision-making, particularly with money, becoming rigid and inflexible in their thinking, or losing their sense of humor and playfulness. These aren't normal aging changes, they're neurological changes that warrant thorough evaluation. I evaluated a patient whose adult daughter brought her in, deeply concerned. The patient was in her early 50s. "My mother has always been considerate and proper," the daughter explained, "but over the past couple of years, she's become rude. She interrupts constantly. She says inappropriate things about people's appearance or personal situations, things she would have been mortified to say before. And she doesn't seem to care or even notice she's doing it." The mother herself didn't think anything was problematic. "People are too sensitive nowadays," she said dismissively. "I'm just being honest." That lack of self-awareness, called anosognosia in medical terminology, is itself often part of the neurological picture. It's not denial in the psychological sense. It's a genuine neurological inability to perceive one's own changes. Testing confirmed early-stage frontotemporal dementia, a particularly difficult diagnosis for families. But early identification allowed us to implement behavioral management strategies, educate the family about what to expect, help them understand that these weren't choices their loved one was making, and connect them with specialized support resources. The disease continues its course, but the family was prepared rather than blindsided. They had time for crucial conversations and legal and financial planning while their loved one could still participate to some degree. The important message: if someone you love is changing, becoming genuinely different from who they've always been, trust your instincts. Don't dismiss it as stress or just getting older. Document specific examples of the changes you're observing. Encourage comprehensive neurological and neuropsychological evaluation. Don't wait for obvious memory problems to appear. By that point, years of potential intervention time may have been lost. These 5 warning signs: word-finding difficulties that follow a pattern, spatial reasoning problems, apathy that doesn't respond to depression treatment, executive function decline, and personality changes, are your early alert system.
They appear years before dementia becomes clinically obvious, offering a critical window when intervention can potentially make a profound difference. Here's what modern neuroscience has taught us. The brain possesses remarkable adaptability, even in the face of neurodegenerative processes. Lifestyle interventions, cognitive training, appropriate medical management, and building cognitive reserve can potentially slow decline, extend independence, and preserve quality of life for years longer. But only if you recognize the warning signs early and take appropriate action. Starting today, monitor yourself and your loved ones honestly. Pay genuine attention to changes in thinking patterns, behavior, and ability to manage daily functions. Don't reflexively dismiss concerning symptoms as normal aging or temporary stress. If you recognize any of these warning signs, or if family members express concerns, even if you don't see the problems yourself, schedule comprehensive cognitive assessment. Not next year, not when symptoms become more severe. Now. Early detection doesn't cure these conditions, but it provides something invaluable. Time. Time to optimize brain health through lifestyle modifications. Time to access appropriate treatments when they're most effective. Time to participate in research that may lead to better therapies. Time to make important legal and financial decisions while you still can. Time to have meaningful conversations with family. Time to maximize every remaining year of independence and quality of life. Don't waste that precious time waiting until symptoms become undeniable. Now, we want to hear from you. Which of these warning signs resonates most with your situation? Have you noticed any of these changes in yourself or someone you love? What concerns do you have about your cognitive future? Share your experiences in the comments below. We read every single one and respond with personalized guidance based on your specific circumstances. And please, subscribe to this channel and share this video widely. Think about how many people over 40 are experiencing these subtle warning signs right now without understanding their potential significance. Sharing this information could genuinely change someone's cognitive trajectory.
It could give someone years of quality life they wouldn't have had otherwise. Your brain health depends on the choices and actions you take today. Choose awareness over denial. Choose action over waiting. Choose to protect the extraordinary organ that makes you who you are. Thank you for watching.